thank you very much. Now to more of our look back at the assassination of JFK 50 years later. One iconic image of that fateful day in Dallas is the First Lady's pink suit. NBC's Andrea Mitchell has the remarkable story behind it.
The anti-Texans are on hand.
Jacqueline Kennedy arrived in Dallas that morning perfectly dressed in her signature pillbox hat and the matching pink suit that seemed to brighten an already sunlit morning. It was an exact copy of a Chanel suit using Chanel fabric, but to avoid political critics, made in the USA. At his last public speech earlier that day, President Kennedy introduced his stylish wife to an adoring crowd.
2 years ago, I said that, introduced myself in Paris by saying that I was the man who had accompanied Mrs. Kennedy to Paris. I'm getting that same sensation as I travel around Texas. Nobody wonders what Lyndon and I wear.
Known to this day simply as the pink suit, Jackie Kennedy had already worn it 6 times, including this 1962 visit to London, before that fateful November 22nd. The suit might never have made it to Dallas, but for Jackie's personal assistant, Providencia Paredes, who had worked for the Kennedys since JFK was a bachelor senator. Today, at age 89, Paredes recalls President Kennedy telling her to get the First Lady's wardrobe ready for the Texas trip.
He said, pack something light because it's supposed to be warm over there.
Pack something light because it would be warm in Dallas.
Yeah, yes. I put everything out and wrapped in her dressing room. So I had everything ready for her. So then she picked what she wanted.
She liked that pink suit a lot. She wore it several times.
Yes.
The suit was to become indelibly marked by tragedy, blood-stained in the motorcade, and worn by the newly widowed Mrs. Kennedy for the swearing-in of the new president, as a badge of horror and shame for the nation and the world to see.
Lady Bird Johnson said, perhaps you don't want to wear this suit that was drenched in the late president's blood. And Jackie Kennedy's reply was, no, I want them to see what they have done to Jack.
Jacqueline Kennedy escorted her husband home, but didn't return to the White House until 4:30 the next morning. By then, she had changed clothes. Did you pack the dress in a box and send it?
I never saw the dress.
You never saw it again?
I never saw the dress.
Mrs. Kennedy's mother kept the suit at her home in Georgetown until the following July, when, still blood-stained to preserve it for history, it was sent to the National Archives, and there it remains, under the terms of a gift from Caroline Kennedy 10 years ago, not to be seen for another 90 years. For today, Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Washington.
Not to be seen for another 90 years. I mean, no offense, but that'll be
so many memories, and
that'll be past your time as well. Anyway, I had to give Callie a bad time. She was right, but it went to her mother first. All right, who else lost a husband in this deal? Who else lost a husband in this thing? Well, not yet. Tippit. So we'll see what Marie Tippit has to say 50 years later. Okay, this is Marie Tippit 50 years later. But Caroline's not interested. Let me ask you a question. Why is Caroline Kennedy making you wait 90 years to see anything? This is not a positive time for her. She doesn't want to be alive. She doesn't want to be alive when all this stuff comes about and have to rehash it. Okay? Let's see what Marie Tippit's story is. This is a great, heartwarming story about Jackie Kennedy as well.
All this week here, we're covering the approaching 50th anniversary on Friday of JFK's assassination in Dallas. And tonight, the other woman who lost her husband that day in Dallas, her name is Marie Tippit. Her husband was J.D. Tippit, a veteran Dallas police officer who had joined in the manhunt for Lee Harvey Oswald. Tom Brokaw sat down with Marie Tippit recently in Dallas.
As a policeman's wife, Marie Tippit knew her husband's job came with a certain amount of danger. But nothing could have prepared her for what happened one Friday 50 years ago.
Well, it started out as an ordinary day. They got the kids off to school, Jenny went to work.
Her husband came home for lunch and then rushed back onto the streets looking for the suspect wanted for shooting the president.
They had called him and told him a description of the person that they was looking for.
At the corner of 10th and Patton, just a few miles from where Marie was waiting for him, Officer Tippit crossed paths with Lee Harvey Oswald.
Who's talking? Thank you, Temple Bowley. Very good.
Oswald fired 4 shots, 3 to the body and 1 to the head. Tippit never had a chance.
Your wife crashed around you at that point.
Everything. I just couldn't believe it. It was just unreal.
We begin this national period of mourning the president, and yet in a very personal way, you have to deal with your own grief. Is that hard?
Oh, was it ever? Yes. We've grown so close together that he was the other part of me that was just missing.
Facing life with 3 children without him, it seems almost impossible.
As the media storm began to swirl around her, Marie Tippit found her thoughts going to the one person who could truly understand her ordeal, Jacqueline Kennedy.
I can certainly sympathize with her.
The 2 young widows saw their husbands laid to rest on the same day, and somehow, in the midst of her grief, the First Lady found time to write a condolence letter to Marie Tippit. This never-before-seen letter was as direct as it was unexpected.
Dear Mrs. Tippit, what can I say to you? My husband's death is responsible for you losing your husband. Wasn't one life enough to take on that day? I lit a flame for Jack at Arlington that will burn forever. I consider that it burns for your husband too, and so will everyone who ever sees it. With my unexpressible sympathy, Jacqueline Kennedy.
That's the thing that you always want, is somebody that just can understand how you feel. And she did. She recognized that I was suffering too. And isn't that wonderful? That we had a First Lady that was so caring for everyone.
And Jacqueline Kennedy was only 33 years old when she wrote that letter just a week later. And obviously, Mrs. Tippit treasures it, but legally, it's part of the property of the Kennedy estate. Caroline Kennedy, and we're grateful to her for this, said it's okay if you want to share that with the rest of the country, and it is a real treasure.
Quite a revelation, and what a lovely...
Boy, if that doesn't touch your heart a little bit. Okay, who else? I'm going to give you a little prelude here to what we're going to do Monday and Tuesday, and I'm going to show you the same interview, this time with Clint Hill. Whoop. Okay, this is Clint Hill.
Did she remarry Mr. Stewart?
I don't think she ever did. I don't know that for sure, but I don't think she ever did.
Jackie remarried.
Jackie remarried, yeah.
I have a question.
Yep.
Shh.
Listen up.
Oswald sat in the 5th seat and then the 2nd?
Yeah, I had that so screwed up the other day. He originally sat in the 5th, then went to the 2nd. Yeah, I screwed that up the other day pretty good. So wound up. Mary's over there laughing. Okay. Here's Clint Hill's recollection. Here we go. Shh.
We are back, and tonight we begin our coverage of the 50th anniversary coming up this Friday of the assassination of President Kennedy in Dallas. Tonight, the story of a man who witnessed it up close, former Secret Service agent Clint Hill, still haunted by the events of that day, described in a new book, 5 Days in November, which comes out tomorrow. Tonight, Agent Hill returns to Dallas with Savannah Guthrie for a rare and personal look back on that day.
Here comes Air Force number 1.
50 years ago this week, the Kennedys came to Dallas.
And there is Mrs. Kennedy stepping from the plane wearing a bright pink suit.
And Dallas turned out for them.
In fact, he's not in his limousine. He's reaching across the fence, shaking hands.
But it all changed in an instant.
Something is wrong here. Something is terribly wrong.
Chaos, confusion.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade group.
And for the men willing to take a bullet for the president, utter desperation.
There's a Secret Serviceman spread eagle on the top of the car.
That agent was 31-year-old Clint Hill, a man still struggling with what might have been.
It was a tragic situation and something that just never goes away. It's always eating at me.
We first met Hill in 2012. He told us how he was right by Mrs. Kennedy's side as the nation mourned.
That must have broken your heart.
It still does.
Now, 5 decades later, we return to Dallas to retrace those final fateful steps.
It was the usual practice in those days to have open-air motorcades, but we traveled that way at the request of the president.
He didn't even like you agents hanging on to the back of the car.
No, because he didn't want it to appear that there was anything between him and the people.
Is this where the crowds were really getting
Where
big?
the crowd started to really build and grow. They were very enthusiastic and very friendly.
But the crowds began to thin as the motorcade turned toward Dealey Plaza.
You round this corner, not knowing Lee Harvey Oswald is right up there.
I was on the car immediately behind the president's car when all of a sudden, as we got down here a little bit farther, there was a loud explosive noise that came over my right shoulder. As I turned toward the noise, my eyes passed across the back of the president's car. And I saw him grab at his throat like this, move violently to his left toward Mrs. Kennedy. And I knew something was wrong, so I jumped off my position on the followed car and ran toward the presidential vehicle.
Someone in the limousine might have been hit by the gunfire.
And it hit the president in the head. And when that happened, she turned and got up on the back of the car.
That famous moment.
Yes.
When she reaches across the trunk. No one understood what she was doing. You knew.
I knew she was trying to gather material that had come off the president's head. I got up on the trunk and I got a hold of her and I put her in the back seat. And I looked down and that's what I saw was the president's right side of his face was up and I could see his eyes were fixed.
You knew in that moment this is a fatal.
Here's my assumption that it was a fatal shot, that he was dead, and I turned to give a thumbs down to the follow-up car to let them know that how serious the situation was.
Mrs. Kennedy said something in those moments.
Oh, she said, Jack, what have they done to you? And then she said, I have his brains in my hand. And then she said, Jack, I love you, Jack.
It was a moment that changed not just a nation, but a young man forever.
You know in your head there's nothing you could have done.
Yeah.
But your heart?
That's the problem. It's that aching sensation that, oh, if only.
How about that after all these years, like it was yesterday? Savannah Guthrie with Clint Hill.
Okay, there's one more I want to show you, and it's a gal by the name of Marianne Moorman. And I didn't talk about her too much. She doesn't have a big significance, but she was standing, remember I showed you on the opposite side, there's a Zapruder film in the opposite side where the lady in red was, that I showed you in the red coat, and that was Jean Hill. Mary Moorman was standing behind or beside her and got a view of the assassination from the opposite side of the Zapruder film. And she'll tell you a little bit about her experience here. This was a really timeful thing for me in this class when the 50th anniversary came, because there was just so much stuff on it at the time. It was just incredible. And so you're getting a chance to see some things that classes prior to that never had a chance to see. Okay, this is Marianne Moorman. Thank you.
Back now at 7:41 with more of our week-long look at the assassination of JFK 50 years later.
One well-known photo of that tragedy has been analyzed and debated throughout the years. It shows the exact moment that President Kennedy was hit by the first bullet, and the woman who took it sat down with us for her first broadcast television interview in nearly 50 years.
As enthusiastic supporters greeted President Kennedy and the First Lady at Love Field on a warm November day, Marianne Moorman and her friend Jean Hill were making their way to downtown Dallas to see the president's motorcade.
When you heard that President Kennedy was coming to Dallas on that day, did you immediately decide that you wanted to go out and see this young president, or was it something that was a longer decision?
Oh, it was an exciting time that we could see our president, but we liked Jackie. We wanted to see Jackie, and that was the main reason to come downtown.
Like thousands of other people along the motorcade route, Marianne had a camera with her to capture the moment.
The picture you really wanted to get that day was what picture?
Of the president with Jackie in the car as they passed us.
was just before 12:30 in the afternoon on that Friday, and Mary Ann Moorman, then 31 years old, had her Polaroid camera, and she was taking up her position here on the side of the road. At that very same moment, Lee Harvey Oswald was taking up his position here in a window 1 floor below me at the Texas School Book Depository. He was watching as the presidential motorcade made that very slow turn from Houston Street onto Elm Street.
A home movie taken by Abraham Zapruder shows the motorcade coming down Elm Street, just as President Kennedy reacts to the first shot. You can see Mary Ann in the blue raincoat, ready to snap her picture of the president.
You took the picture when the limo was right there, and you heard what?
I heard the shot.
See, he screwed up early because he said she took a picture of the first shot. Did you hear him say that? Yeah. He screwed up as the third.
Took the camera down and I heard 2 more shots.
Give me the sound of the shots.
Pow, pow, pow.
You also heard something else coming from the limousine, didn't you?
I heard Jackie yell, "My God, he's been shot."
I think what's most chilling about that is that's how close you were. I mean, you could hear the First Lady screaming,
Absolutely.
"My God, he's been shot."
Right.
In another home movie taken from a different angle, you can see the limousine passing Mary Ann as the fatal shot hits the president.
I saw his hair jump, but it wasn't just his hair. It was part of his head. That is so clear in my mind to this day.
This is the moment that Mary Ann captured. An enlarged version is on display at the 6th floor museum at Dealey Plaza.
She's the only one who got a clear view of President Kennedy at the moment he was killed, and the grassy knoll in the background.
In the 50 years since the assassination, conspiracy theorists have enhanced Mary Ann's photo, looking for a second gunman on the grassy knoll, sometimes dubbed the Badge Man.
So today as we sit here, do you think that's a Badge Man?
It looks like a person in this position shooting, but whether it is or not, I don't know, because the picture is not clear enough.
You see anybody there? Did you see anybody there? Okay, let me show you something. This is what conspiracy theorists say. Now listen to me here. Here is the police officer's eye. Here's the police officer's head. Here's the smoke from the gun he shot. Here's a soldier, and here's the badge. Now, can you kind of see 2 eyes here? Well, and a nose, well, and maybe a badge and a shoulder and the gun. That's just such a bunch of bull. It's just incredible. But that's what they picked out of that thing, and that was supposed to be the one that took the shot. Yeah. Well, and then you don't, and no gun smokes like that when it's shot.
Did he shoot a musket?
Yeah. Thank you. Anyway, there you go. That's what he's talking about.
In the chaos that followed,
Okay, listen up.
approached Mary Ann to make a copy of her
Listen
picture
up.
for the newspaper. And a television reporter interviewed Mary Ann and her friend Jean as they waited in the press office.
No, I didn't. I must have sent it immediately when he slumped, because in the picture that's the way she's there and he slumped over.
As the rest of the world debated and dissected the assassination over the years, Mary Ann moved on with her life in Dallas, not giving much thought to any of the conspiracy theories. But in 1982, she got a rare chance to sit in the sniper's perch, where Lee Harvey Oswald fired his rifle on that fateful day in 1963.
It was a traumatic time, really.
So you were traumatized in the days and weeks after the shooting?
Yes, the thought always comes back to me. I saw a man murdered right in front of my eyes. That thought is still present in my mind right now.
I asked Mary Ann if she accepted the Warren Commission's findings that Oswald had acted alone. She said, initially, yes, but 50 years of government scandals, cover-ups, and other things like that have made her believe that there might be more to this.
See, she's using that, stuff going on now to make that decision. A couple of things I want to mention. The thing about that Dealey Plaza, the first time I went down there, and that was 2003, I couldn't believe how small it was. It looks like this huge area. It's very, very tiny. It's a very tiny area. It's less than a half a block long. And that's the first thing that I saw in my mind when I went down there, is how small it was. When I took Blake Kroger down there last summer, the first thing he said when he got to Dealey Plaza was, "God, I thought this was a lot bigger." Now, I don't know if you're interested, but I took Blake last year. I have a couple students that are thinking about coming. If you guys get into this enough by the time we're done, if you want to go down to Dallas in June with me, it costs you probably $600 to do it. I'll take you down there and we'll meet with a lot of people that had to do with this. You have to talk to Blake. Blake, I think, would tell you is one of the greatest things he ever did. Not everybody's into it. He was really into it. He really is good. You know, he's going to major in history. The things he got a chance to see were incredible, and the people he got a chance to meet. So I'm considering that. We'll talk about that and see what your interest level is later. Okay, here's the deal. On Monday, we are going to watch a video for 2 days called The Kennedy Detail. Clint Hill and all the Secret Service agents that you see up here will be speaking on their experiences of what happened that day in Dallas. It's a phenomenal story. Mary Mormon's signature and a picture I have, and the picture that she took that day is hanging on the wall there as well, if you're interested in looking. The only other person I want you to hear an eyewitness report from is Nellie Conley. They interviewed her 35 years later. I'd like you to hear that. So then we'll move on and we'll be done. Looking good. You guys have a good weekend.